Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the JMO Podcast. I'm your host, Tayler Michels, and we've got an extra special episode. We've got Todd Amenrud from Mossy Oak on this week's show. Todd's been an asset in the outdoor industry for a long time. In this podcast, we learn a little bit of Todd's origin story, and we learn a whole bunch more about how to manage and harvest big whitetails in the Midwest. A little different show this week. We're talking hunting, not so much fishing, but there's still a lot to learn and a lot to enjoy on this week's show. Make sure to visit our Facebook and Instagram pages at Jason Mitchell Outdoors to recommend a guest or a topic for an upcoming episode of the JMO Podcast.
Hello,
Todd.
is this Taylor?
This is Tayler, man. Nice to speak to you.
Nice to speak to you too. Nice to meet you over the phone.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And how do I say your last name? Amenrud? Is that just how it?
Well, the Norwegian in us pronounces it with the long A, Amenrud, but I'm okay. I answer to just about anything if I know
Right
you're
on.
talking to me. So
Right on, right on. And maybe we'll start this off with maybe a little brief recap of how you operate within the outdoor industry,
Sure.
over
Yeah.
time. And then I kind of want to ask you about, some early season archery, some whitetail stuff. So
Yep.
give us a little recap and then maybe dive into some of your philosophies on some early season archery whitetail in the Midwest.
Well, my name is Todd Amenrud. I work for Mossy Oak Camouflage, and I also own my own business where I work contractually through a company called Wildlife Research Center. They make scent killer and poor deer pee for you to buy for the fall hunting season. I through the years back in the 90s, I had my own. If you're in the Dakotas, you've probably, if you're older than 30 years old, heard of Tony Dean. His company used to buy time. I used to have a syndicated television show for about 3 years. Something I never want to do again. It started so hunting wasn't fun anymore. It got to be too much of a job. But I work in the hunting industry. I've been doing it since 1989, and best industry in our beautiful country.
What is it that really fires you up about whitetail hunting and bow hunting specifically?
Well, what originally got me interested in I guess whitetail hunting is when I was a little boy and you could party hunt here in Minnesota. We had a group of about 20 people that used to go, and I use in the quotation marks, up north. I live about 40 miles, 40 minutes, we'll say, north of Minneapolis. So we're basically a suburb of Minneapolis now, but we always used to go up north deer hunting with the guys. And at a very young age, I shot my first whitetail at 8 years old. And at a very young age, I was filling half the tags in a 20-person party. It was something that became easy to me. I used to then, it was all about the challenge. And after about 16 years old, I didn't pick up a rifle again, or really a gun to shoot. I love hunting birds too, so I use shotgun all the time. But to shoot a whitetail, I didn't pick up a gun until probably 15 years ago again, where management started to become a big thing. But the challenge was really the one thing that bow hunting really gave to me. That I felt like I had accomplished something. Especially my big kick was being able to be on the ground and to stalk within bow distance of a bedded buck that was there. And so that was a big kick. But I shoot them out of tree stands and ground blinds too. Over the years, my passion has changed, and it all changed because of jealous justification, I guess you could say. I started thinking how, different ways that I could kill bigger bucks. And I knew that planting food plots were one thing that's going to attract them. So I started doing that. Oh, heck, back in the probably late 80s, I suppose. And over time, it changed from a passion about hunting whitetails to a passion about managing whitetails. So I probably get a bigger kick nowadays out of growing a Boone and Crockett buck than I do hunting one, really. If I can accomplish that task, I can get that deer from 1 to 5, 6, or 7 years old, and that's I still love hunting them. But if you kill the biggest deer on your property, you're wiping out the best genetics you have on your property. So a person has to think when they're into management, is that the best thing to do or not? But I love hunting. We'll say mature bucks is still a great passion for me, but I really love managing them as well.
Did you have, was there mentorship, or was the industry kind of turning that way at that time, or was this just kind of some organic feelings of your own? Were these just kind of your own observations and your own feelings that you were acting on? I mean, what were some of your other influences?
The big switch over was my own seeing what the big picture is really about. Back when I had my television show, I'll use as an example, the pressure. You can't imagine shooting one buck that will make the record book, the Pope and Young record book, during the course of a season is something most hunters just cannot do. Well, so now try to do that 13 times in 1 year with a camera person or two with you that may or may not have hunted ever before, just to get close to an animal like that. And so I used to get to be the pressure was so great. The fun got out of it for me. So I started getting more into planting food plots specifically to attract deer, but then I saw how that really improved everything, not only just for whitetails, but for all the wildlife on the property. And so now my kick is to learn more about that. My father is a Hall of Fame angler, Randy Amenrud, and he was one of his big passions in life before he left us a few years ago was he built several fairly large ponds, about 10 acres in size, 30 some feet deep, and kind of wanted to, and I use this term loosely, play God, or to see how he could manage the fishery. And what astounded me is he could manage that fishery like he could see what was happening down there, and that just boggled my mind. I'm an air breather. I don't live underwater, so I can see what's happening to the whitetails, but he could figure out, how to grow bigger and more fish, but not even be able to see what was going on down there. So that just astounded me. But I don't know if that answered part of your question anyhow.
Yeah, 100%. I like that. I mean, that's just that's really motivating perspective where I think that there's a lot of followers in the industry, right? There's so much media. You can see all these stories, quote unquote, being told on TV, and it's hard to see what's going on behind the camera or behind the scenes, or how genuine some of this stuff is. You hope most of it is, but for you to have your own feelings like that and to allow the industry to influence you that way, it probably seemed frustrating at times, but in the end, what a positive outcome for you. It sounds like you're very happy doing this.
Oh, absolutely. And I was happy back then. It was just it took a lot of the fun out of hunting is having that pressure to produce. And nowadays, just as an example, back in the 90s, I know this because Mossy Oak was one of my sponsors for my television show, and I worked directly for them, so I know the numbers. Back then, they had approximately 35 different television shows solicit them for advertising revenue. Now we have over 300 different television shows that solicit us for, a piece of that pie. So, and I got to tell you that there are some good shows and there are some that I wouldn't bother turning on the TV to create light in the room for. So, you know.
Let's slide into some of the hunting now. What have been some of the hunting experiences that you've had over your career, maybe traveling or maybe close to home, that have sort of helped you develop some philosophy for, some of your early season archery hunting?
Sure. Well, back in the day, before I'm not a extremely wealthy guy, so I used to have to go knock on doors, and I used to spend a lot of time up in Canada, especially Manitoba. The way I thought of it, I've been an outdoor writer throughout this most time too, and in researching an article, and this was numbers back in the 90s, we'll say, I found out that Minnesota as a state has more licensed gun hunters than Manitoba has total population, and they have 20 times the habitat that we do. So they just don't have the hunting pressure, and the deer get to grow old enough. So I used to spend a lot of time traveling. I remember one hunting season doing the television show where I hunted 13 different states for whitetails in one hunting season, and that was just I never wanted to do that again. I was so tired when I was done, and I started to get enough money where I could pay for an outfitter, and I'd go to Wyoming and do this or go somewhere and do that. So I started to get, rather than having to knock on doors, you don't have to spend quite as much time if someone else has already been knocking on those doors for you. So I'd pay for a few hunts, and then after a few years of doing that, I thought, well, I could take this same money, buy property, or put that money into a property to grow my own big deer. And quite frankly, if people look at this and are, mind their dollars properly, that's the best thing anyone could do. Land is a great investment, and I'm here to tell you that you can, grow a record book buck and kill one every year if you do things right. So depends upon your goals, I guess. Different people hunt for different reasons. Some for food, some for camaraderie. For me, like I said before, it was the challenge, but so it depends upon your goals.
What are some of your tips and tricks over the years? Land management has been a pretty popular topic for a while now. I mean, there's certainly a barrier of entry. You got to be able to afford some property or get permission to manage somebody's land. But, for average bow hunter has a few spots. What are some management tips and tricks that are kind of etched in stone nowadays that people need to be paying attention to if they're not already?
Sure. Well, here in the upper Midwest, it's still tough nowadays to knock on doors. I mean, back in the day, I used to, can I bow hunt your property? And people would laugh and say, bow hunt? Yeah, sure, have at it. And now it's pretty tough to do that. Down south and out east, heck, if you don't own property or belong to a hunting club, it can be pretty tough getting on private land. So, I mean, you're stuck with state land, federal land, or some type of public property, and things can be tough with, pressured animals are tough to hunt. So I suggest, if people don't own their own property, get together a couple friends. I, for many, many years, had a beautiful lease in the Turtle Mountains, North Dakota. Unbelievable hunting there. And we just, my brother-in-law and I just pooled some money together, and we were able to lease land there for a number of years. I've had leases in South Dakota and Missouri and all over the place. So, and it's a way to gain access and, hunt undisturbed deer rather than, deer that 15 other hunyucks before you've been out there molesting. So, but managing your own property, it's pretty simple. It can be either simple or complex, depending upon how you look at it. You need food, water, cover, and it always used to be known as the FWC formula, right? Food, water, cover. Well, in recent years, they've added an extra S to that. So it's the FWCS formula. And that extra S could stand for a number of things, space, sanctuary, security, whatever. It just means don't bugger your wildlife. It means give them a place where they're left alone, and it makes hunting them so much easier. So they need food, water, sanctuary, and or cover, space to live and live undisturbed, we'll say. And if you have that, I mean, you have the makings for really everything you'll need for good hunting. Pressure is huge. So many people get the day off work. I'm going to the tree stand, and they don't even consider wind direction or thermals or whether they can get to their spot without bumping all the animals in the area. So pressure is huge. The main things, hardly ever do all the humidity and barometer and everything align for you so you have the perfect time to sit, but you definitely have to make sure that the wind and thermals are in your favor, and that you can approach and regress from your hunting spot without bumping a lot of animals, without alerting the whole herd to your presence. And if you can do that, you're on your way.
The JMO Podcast is sponsored by Long Haul Trucking. Long Haul's always looking for more skilled professional CDL drivers to join their team. They're a people-first company, and it shows. Their employee-owned, asset-based fleet of over 350 Conestogas is among industry leaders in pay and benefits geared towards long-term success and growth for company drivers and owner-operators. If you're a professional driver or a company that wants to ship product with the best in the business, get a hold of Long Haul at 1-800-255-5153 or find them online at longhaultrucking.com. Long Haul, running on the power of promises kept. Because ultimately, I mean, whitetails as a species, they can be pretty sensitive to that kind of contact. I mean, maybe go into some of the nuance of how how you interpret the behavior of a whitetail deer.
That's an excellent question. Now, you have to understand which whitetail, what whitetail you're pursuing. I would say that a mature buck, once he reaches the age of 3, it's almost like you're hunting and a different animal than the does, fawns, and younger bucks in the herd. They danger differently. Great example would be you walk into a wood lot, and we'll say you got a couple doe fawn family groups, a couple young bucks, and then King Kong's bedded there, not too far away from that group. And you slam your car door and you start walking out there, and Mama Doe, she's snorting and she'll stomp, she'll make these goofy jumps, and that's to alert the rest of the herd that danger, danger, danger. Her job is to protect herself as well as all the other members of the herd. Mr. Big, he worries about number one, and you'll see him. He'll hunker down, wait for you to walk by. He'll sneak out the back door. I've watched him get into a dry creek bed and crawl because they know there's danger there, and they know how to avoid it. And they don't want to point the finger at them. Those females, especially those alpha grandmothers and the mother does out there, they have to protect themselves, and they need to alert the other deer that there's danger there. So they danger differently. For the better part of the year, they live in completely different places. You have to remember until the testosterone starts flowing and those antlers harden, that alpha grandmother doe, she's the dominant deer in an area. So a lot of times you'll find that you walk into an area and you go, man, this looks like great deer habitat, especially those nice woodlots right next to the food source. Those are almost always going to be your doe fawn bedding areas, and you'll find those mature bucks basically wherever you leave them alone. You know that shelter belt no one ever walks down. You got flat agriculture, stubble field for 2 miles in every direction. You got that little acre cattail swamp out there. That's where he's going to be, wherever you leave him alone. So they live in different places. A mature buck will respect all of his senses. He doesn't take the chance. And how I can explain this is, let's say you're sitting in your tree stand and Mama Doe's coming along with her 2 fawns in tow, and you switch your weight to get a little better vantage, to get your shot to get a shot at the doe, and all of a sudden your tree stand squeaks. And she'll stop, and then the two fawns stop right behind her. And if she figures out everything's all right, a little mental tangent, every time before she'll take another step, her tail will go twitch, 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 back and forth. I call it the hey, everything's okay tail wag. But before she takes another step, she'll do that to let her fawns know behind her through body language, oh, no, everything's okay, we can continue on. But normally what will happen if does and fawns see something they're not sure of, or they hear something they're not sure of, they'll almost always wait for confirmation from their one sense that they are definitely going to be sure if it's danger or not, their sense of smell. So a lot of times you'll see them, they'll drop downwind, and Mama Doe, she'll get that nose waving in the air trying to catch, was that really a bad noise or a danger noise? A mature buck, not even going to take that chance. He hears the tree stand squeak from 100 yards away. He's just going to turn around and walk in the opposite direction, more than likely. So they're different animals almost. So it really depends. Am I pursuing a mature buck, or am I just going out to put some meat in the freezer, I guess?
That's excellent insight. What would be your hierarchy? What would be your numbered list of priorities to consider when you're going out hunting, any time of year bow hunting, but specifically early season, and maybe what is it that you see maybe some other hunters that they're just not considering, they're not prioritizing enough? Is it strictly just they only got one stand, one blind, and because they have time, they're going to go hunt it regardless of the wind? Because you talked about, obviously the deer sense of smell being their, they have the utmost respect for their nose. They don't make mistakes with their nose. Absolutely.
That's a big point there is oftentimes mediocre hunters. And I understand this. We only, I have a job too. So, we only have so much time, and you got that time off work. You want to make it, I want to get in that stand. I want to hunt. I don't want to have to, but I suggest that you wait until the conditions are in your favor and use that time. If you got the day off work, go set up another tree stand, go do some scouting, go put a trail camera out. I would say that information is the number one most important thing. Scouting, I don't care what, not just whitetails, I don't care what you're hunting, waterfowl, upland, you need to know the game is there if you're going to have success. And with whitetails, I take it a step further. You need to know the game is there, and you need to kind of have an idea of what they're going to do. So whether it be through the use of trail cameras, or I still enjoy, I have several dozen trail cameras, but I still enjoy glassing. There's nothing that can teach you more than actually watching a specific animal for a period of time. You get to see, are they dominant? Can't really tell that through photo, or sometimes not even video. How do they act around the other deer? Things like that. So scouting, not only going out and looking for the sign, the rubs and scrapes and tracks and droppings and beds and things like that. And in fact, during the season, I would suggest that you limit the amount that you go trompsing through your hunting area looking for fresh sign, because if you're walking through looking for a rub that you didn't see on the tree on your last trip through there 3 days ago, you will not house mature bucks in that area. I promise you that. So, but at times you do have to go in and look for that physical sign, but that non-invasive scouting is really, really important. That glassing and what you can learn on trail cameras. We are so lucky nowadays. What a great tool to learn about what's happening. Okay, mental tangent number 2. I got to say here that I'm not sure how I feel about some of the new technology out there, and whether or not I consider it to be fair chase or not. Where you got a camera, I can sit at my desk and bink, oh, here pops up a picture of the buck that I want entering my hunting area. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but as a tool to learn about the patterns, if you want to manage your property effectively, you have to have trail cameras out there. You need to know what you're dealing with if you want to get it to where you want it to be, if that makes any sense. So that information gathering. The other thing that I see, most hunters do not put enough emphasis into scent elimination, scent reduction. Now you have to think that a bloodhound has approximately 250 million nasal receptors. A whitetail has 297 million nasal receptors, okay? So reducing, I'm not even sure if there is such a thing as being totally scent free to a whitetail, but I am positive I can reduce those foreign odors to minuscule trace levels that even mature bucks will tolerate in close proximity. So I would say that a strict regime of scent elimination is a huge factor in getting closer to, let alone mature bucks, any whitetail. So that would start with, washing your boots and clothes in a good hunter's clothing wash. Like I use Scent Killer Gold. I love this stuff. They have, if you can find it, they still have some of it out there. They make this powder that is actually more effective than the liquid. And if you have carbon suits or Gore-Tex, it washes much cleaner, makes the Gore-Tex or carbon suit much more effective because it rinses cleaner from the tiny little porous things that are in each of those. But you need to reduce the odors on your clothing, and so I'd wash them. I'd dry them outside if you can. Obviously, here in the north, that's going to be a problem once we get freezing temperatures. So it's okay to dry them in the dryer, but just make sure you remove all those dryer sheets they still make like dryer bars that you put in there, like fabric softener bars. Take all that out of there. Okay to dry your clothes, and then once they're totally dry, and that's a huge key, totally dry, I'm going to seal them in some type of a container, some type of a, typically I'll put them in a plastic bag, and then I'll put that in, I like it clear plastic bag so I can see like what suit of camo I'm taking out. And then I'll take those bags and put the bags in like a plastic storage container. And I say totally dry because if there's any moisture in anything you're putting in that container with your clothes, like some hunters take and they'll put pine boughs in with their clothes or a bunch of leaves from the forest floor, that is a bad idea, because once you seal that in a container, you started a chemical reaction now since there's moisture in there. And even with our limited sense of smell, you pick up a fresh pine bough and pick the one that's been in your container for a week, and there's a stark difference between the two. So keep it totally dry, put it in there. There's these new things called tote tamers. If you're going to put anything in with your clothes, throw one of these tote tamers in there. It will actually, if there is any moisture in there, it absorbs the moisture, and it actually will help destroy the odors as well. They're big round red things that you about the size of about as big as round of a baseball, and throw one of those in there. One can last you all season long. And then concentrate on your person. Shower before you go out there. Scent Killer Gold. I shower in that soap all the time. I use it on my hair and my body. Most feared smell there is to a whitetail, El Serene or human scent. That is we are their primary predator just about anywhere they're found. So I want to smell like anything but a human. So concentrate on that. Brush your teeth before you go out there. Yeah, mint toothpaste has that minty smell to it, but I promise you it's better than the breath of a human carnivore. So speaking of a carnivore, watch what you eat before you go out there. Onions, peanut butter, garlic, things like that. If you smell it, guess who smells it 1,000 times better than you do? And then finally watch what you're carrying out there on your equipment. You've been gripping your bow on the range all summer long with your bare, sweaty hand. Think about things like that. Your tree stand, is it stored in your garage right now? So you start up your car, all that exhaust is permeating into your tree stand. Think about, things like that. Then you also have to think about the smells you're leaving behind. Not only the smells on us, but scent transfer to the area that you're intending to hunt. You go out and set up a tree stand. I do not want to let that animal know that I'm there. And a lot of people they'll say, oh, I'm going to set up my stand 3 weeks before hunting. Well, they're not there 3 weeks and you screw in that tree step with your bare sweaty hand, or you just leave a lot of scent around that area, and that buck shows up 10 minutes after you left, you're not going to kill him in 3 weeks out of that stand. So pay particular attention, wear rubber boots and at least some type of a glove when you're touching things, especially around where you're setting up a stand or a ground blind, and be very careful. Anytime, let's say you're walking to your tree stand and you got knee-high rubber boots on because you're trying to be real careful, but you're walking through some tall grass and that grass is touching your pant leg. Oh, got a hitchhiker in your boot. So you stop and you lean against the tree to get the hitchhiker out of your boot. You get close to your stand and you didn't duck quite low enough and a piece of brush just touches your forehead. I promise you, a whitetail is going to smell all three of those things. And it's going to depend upon temperature and humidity and a few other factors on how long that smell will be there and how strong it stays. But my thing is, why let them know you're coming? So aside from paying attention to the smells we're bringing out there, you also got to pay attention to what you're behind and try to eliminate or reduce scent transfer as well.
I love it, man. That it's such a timeless message to be sent. Just if there was a way to perfect scent control, you could make so many other mistakes. Some things you got to do well enough, but you talk about noise or exact location and being on the X, like there's just if scent control could just be mastered. First of all, that would just hunting might not be as much fun anymore because that's half of the game is preparing for it. But man,
right. Well, yes, it sure has helped me. You always want to think that you've got those animals figured out and they're going to show up where you think they are, downwind, or you want them upwind or crosswind of you. So, but that doesn't happen all the time. So a good strict system of scent elimination has saved me more times than not. But with that said, it's also so important to learn not only how to play the wind and thermal. So physically, when I'm hunting whitetails, I'm going to try to remain downwind or crosswind of them whenever possible, right? So a little wind checker, or if you're cheap, you don't want to spend $3 on a wind checker, you walk past some cattails, grab some cattail duff, stuff in your pocket. Or my favorite device to check the wind with are milkweed seeds. You can see them go for a long, long way. Now, what this does for people, we got to see it to believe it. So, you're sitting in your tree stand, breeze is hitting you on the right side of your face. So wind's coming from that way, right? But from, 5 feet away, it might be blowing the opposite direction. And since we can't see it, we don't know that. So it really helps you start to understand how air currents work when you can watch them for, you watch smoke at a fire sometime and just watch how it goes. And it really helps you to understand. And even in flat areas, I mentioned thermal so many times, and you go out west and you're hunting elk in the mountains, and everybody is thermal this and thermal that. In fact, I'd say they probably pay more attention to the thermal than the wind direction. But you need to use both in conjunction. But hunting flat areas, it can mean paying attention to detail. The sun rises. So let's say you're hunting a little acre food plot. Sun rises. It's going to hit one side of the food plot before it does anywhere else. Your air is going to warm there before it does anywhere else. So your thermal is going to rise there before it does anywhere else. Opposite in the afternoon when things start to cool, obviously. And pay particular attention around anything where the sun's radiating on it all day long. Thick old black, muddy, murky swamp, conifer trees, rocks, or water at different times of the year will retain a different temperature than the actual air temperature. So you check the air currents around things like that, and you'd be amazed. Sometimes they work like river currents, where you might have an eddy or a dead spot or a whirlpool effect. I've seen times where you can have a 10, 15 mile an hour wind whipping over a woodlot, and you stand on the edge of the woodlot and it feels like you have a 10, 15 mile an hour wind blowing back in the opposite direction when you're standing in the trees, because of the way the eddies swirling around and coming back in the other direction. So we wouldn't know that unless you get that little checker out and watch those particles or whatever. Some unscented cotton used to have a down patch that I'd tape on my bow, and you cut a razor slit in the middle of the down patch, then you could take tiny little down flecks. So there's lots of ways that we can check that wind, but learning how to play that, and why I said learning how to physically play the wind when we're hunting, because not only will that help you when you can see those air currents, it will start to make you understand where you should hunt during certain times. We have to play how the whitetail plays the wind, if that makes any sense. We have to, a person might go out and, man, they got rubs on trees 12 inches in diameter, scrapes as big as the hood of their pickup truck, and they'll lick their fingers, stick it in the air, and they'll point to a spot downwind, and they're going to set up there. And that's good, because this hunter has realized to be fairly consistent, you need to try to remain downwind or crosswind. But why would that deer in its right mind ever be in that spot under that one specific condition? What I want to think about is, a whitetail is not going to utilize a location unless it can use its sense of smell efficiently. It might travel through that spot quickly, but it's not going to spend time in that spot unless it can use its senses efficiently. So I want to think about, under what conditions will that deer favor being here? So I want that deer to feel comfortable about that spot, but also under the conditions I'm hunting that spot. So I guess you kind of need to play how the whitetail plays the wind. So it all kind of fits together. So if we haven't figured out that, now we have that system of scent elimination there to try to help us cover up those mistakes.
Oh, sure. And, talking about trying to figure out and visualize what the wind is doing, anything, just imagine, anything that we don't know about the wind that's going on, they certainly do, so.
Well, yeah, right. They're 24/7. They've experienced it 100 times before. And this is, the spots that I hunt a lot, I actually map the winds. I got this goofy device. I don't even remember what it's called, but you press this button and hold it horizontal, and the wind will blow through it. And after about 5 seconds or so, a little red light will come on, and you point it in exactly north-south. It's got a compass on top, so you point it and you press the button, and it will boink. A little red light will blink and tell you exactly which direction the wind is coming from. And you don't need to have a device like this. Just use your compass and watch the particles float off. But I would say map your locations, because you might be watching, drinking coffee in the morning, getting ready to go out there and watching the Weather Channel, and the wind says it's supposed to be going, northwest at 8 to 10. And then you get to your tree stand location and you're going, what do you mean northwest 8 to 10? And it could be blowing from the southwest, or it could be blowing completely different direction because of how the thermals are interacting with the wind direction. Anytime you get a physical barrier like trees or a ridge or things like that, you'd be amazed at how those currents are flowing out there. So now that once I get to my tree stand, I go, no, this is the way it's really going. I make note of that, and then that way I know next time I'm watching the Weather Channel and it says northwest, I know what it's really going to be doing at my stand location.
I love the information that you're covering here. We're gonna run into a time constraint, so I'll switch gears here. And you've alluded to some valuable things already, but let's maybe talk a little bit of gear or preparation. What are some things that people could be thinking about investing in, or we're eventually we're going to be on holiday season and we're going to have to get some Christmas presents for dad or the hunters in the family. What would be some easy investments that people could add to their arsenal to be more effective archery whitetail hunting?
One of the easiest is definitely going to be targets, especially if you're an archer. 3D targets. I can't tell you how many people I know that hunt from tree stands, but they never practice from an elevated platform. Or they hunt from a ground blind and they've never tried to shoot a bow while sitting down. So I call it perfect practice. Practice under the exact conditions that you're going to be hunting under. One time up in Manitoba, I had to let a beautiful 150-inch 5x5 walk past me because it was 20 degrees below zero actual temperature, and I had never hunted or practiced with a full face mask on. So meaning I just had the eye holes and like a little slit from where my mouth was and where my nose kind of was to let the air out. And no more did I get in my tree stand, hoist my bow up, and I got this buck coming at me, and I come to full draw. And my anchor point is touching my string to my nose. And I got to full draw and I panicked because I couldn't feel that perfect anchor, that thing that I always felt every shot I've ever taken in my life. And I wasn't sure. And so I let the buck walk because I wasn't sure. And so practice those realistic situations, especially if you're a tree stand hunter. If you could practice from someone's deck or set up a tree stand and just be careful. Obviously, wear your safety straps and things like that. Maybe have a friend collect your arrows and bring them back to you and hoist them up. But practice from an elevated platform, because the higher you get up there, the more drastic your shot angles decrease. And that's why those targets, that 3D target, helps dearly for knowing those shot angles and what shots you can take and what shots you shouldn't take.
I love it, man. Good luck this fall. Hopefully things go good for you. And
I need lots of that. Same to you.
Yeah. Do you have any social medias or anything like that to promote where people can find some more of your content?
Well, yes, you can go just to the Mossy Oak website, and the landing page brings you to Biologic or Gamekeepers. I would look at gamekeepersclub.com, or again, you can find that all through the mossyoak.com website. The landing page will bring you to Native Nurseries and Mossy Oak Properties and Mossy Oak Camo and Biologic and Gamekeepers and all the brands. But pretty much anything I do on social goes out through those guys, through all our IT guys down there. So
I love it, man. Well, I'll let you back to it, Todd Amenrud.
Excellent. Glad I could help, Taylor.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
And thank you all for following along on another episode of the podcast. If you're following on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts, make sure to like, subscribe, share with your fishing friends, and head over to our social medias on Facebook and Instagram at Jason Mitchell Outdoors, where you can recommend a guest or a topic for an upcoming show.